Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
And good afternoon, Vancouver. Hello, this is Giuseppe Ganci, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hey, Darren.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Darren. Good to see you every Thursday here on Vancouver Co-op Radio. We're not in the studio yet. Oh my God, we're about to go into a third lockdown. I don't even know. I lost count how many lockdowns we've had, but I was planning on being in the studio by now, Darren.
This sucks. I didn't know it was going to go this long.
I know. It's like, it's April 1st today. Like, so much is supposed to be happening, for 2021. For those of you that know a bit about me and Darren's background, we're also participating in lots of events, aka Recovery Day, that's in the background here. And I don't know, Darren. I don't think we're going to do it this year. I mean, I got a couple of notes from the city, and just, people under the age of 50 aren't going to be vaccinated by September, they're saying, and it's their first dose. So there's just no way of being able to do a large scale event. So boo-hoo, but we'll figure out. We had 60,000 views of the virtual Recovery Day event we did last September. So hopefully we'll be able to do a virtual event again, a kind of hybrid, and still get the momentum going that recovery is possible. And on that note, we like to talk about certain issues at the beginning of the show. I talked to Darren a bit earlier, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but heck, this happened. It's my personal lived experience too. Got in a bit of a Twitter war again. There was an article that came out in the local paper. There was 100 new beds funded by the provincial government for addiction treatment. Out of that 100 beds, apparently 29 out of the 100 of those beds offer 12-step facilitation, and it's part of their program. And there's major concerns by advocates for harm reduction that the government funding is going to these programs, and especially 29 of them. It's one too many, kind of thing. And, I personally know one of the programs in Prince Rupert that got some of that funding, really small program, started off with 9 beds, no money, no government money. No one's driving Lexuses. No one's driving, fancy cars, and comments like, 12-step facilitation treatment programs are predatory and greedy, and it's all about the money, and they're not evidence-based. And it's kind of like, man, that hurts people's feelings, and then why I had to post a comment, like it had nothing to do with us, but it has everything to do with us, kind of thing. And it's like, that article sucks. Like you shouldn't be complaining about the 29 beds. You should be grateful that somebody's doing something that's unique and different. Like, there's 29 is a pretty small number of 100. It's not like 99 of them. And we've been talking about this show, and we literally get ridiculed. Harm reduction isn't against 12-step facilitation. Well, if you look at all the articles and you look at all the comments, like, it sure as heck looks like it is. And if you're a harm reductionist out there, like, not all of them, it's just, you can't say anything at all, other than safe supply is the miracle, and it's really disappointing. And, to the organization in Prince Rupert that got a little bit of money to help save lives, like, kudos to you. And so I deleted all the comments, because at the end of the day, it was like, we're fighting while people are dying. Like, we're fighting, like fighting. Give your head a shake. And then I'll let you comment, Darren. So this is what we've been proposing, to, the Minister of Health, for all the way from Ottawa to our local Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. Like, there should be a tiered system where people on welfare and income assistance can choose. I want to go to a place where everybody is abstinence. I want to go to a place where using is okay. I want to go to a place that's Christian based. I want to go to a place that's 12-step based. I want to go to a place where 12-step programs aren't even mentioned. I can't stand them. I want to go to a place where I can pick any model of care, from unicorns to marijuana anonymous to yoga. Like, give me all the choices. That's been done before. It happens in Portugal and some other places where you get to pick and choose, and there's no judgment. If you go here, you go there, no judgment. Here, there's this bizarre idea that every nonprofit has to offer every model of care known to man on earth. But who's going to pay for that? Who's going to staff that? It's endless how many pathways to recovery are. Which pathway is more important? And there's this guise of regulation that they want to create. Regulation has nothing to do with, like, you know, how hot your water is when you wash dishes to make sure they're sanitized. Like, that's already done. Treatment centers are already licensed and were, you know, accredited if they got the ability to do so. Like, it's forced agendas from advocates. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with science. There's no science that shows we need to offer every pathway known to man and for everybody for treatment for addictions. So I'll leave it at just like why can't there be choice in the models of care? Like, we're really good at this, and I don't know if this is appropriate or, you know, to even add a joke to this, but it's like walking into a Japanese restaurant that serves sushi and demanding spaghetti, and it's horrible that you don't offer me spaghetti. I deserve spaghetti now. It's like, go to an Italian restaurant. Like, it's that simple, but we have complicated it, and the health authorities have created this fight. You need to, like, somehow, with no budget, prove your worth. And there's a reason why there's a lot of 12-step programs that haven't been evaluated or researched, because no one's paying for the research. I remember going to UBC, true story, going to UBC, asking them to do a study on 12-step facilitation in a recovery community. You know how much money they wanted? Over $300,000 just to start. I can pull up the emails with the quotes. So who's going to pay for that? Health Canada is too busy researching other stuff. So I'll leave it at that. I just disappointed that the ugly side of me came out on Twitter a couple of days ago, but that's what this does. It hurts our feelings to have to prove your worth every day.
Wow. I don't even know what to say.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, look, if somebody comes out of the worst situation in their life, you know, substance use, let's say, because that's our main topic, our main show, and they've absolutely changed their life. Whatever they did for that one person is legitimate.
I know. Well, right? Thank you.
Even if 60 other people did a different way, is it any less legitimate? Right? And so, I mean, who's doing research here? I know at least one person that successfully recovered and changed their life from a 12-step program. So it's legitimate. And
that's your story, Darren. That's not the norm. That's your story. That's what they tweet. Darren, that's your story. You know, completely making you like irrelevant. Like, Darren, you and I are irrelevant. That's what it is.
They should get money. I'm just looking at the you know, we get emails from the opioid response team from Health Canada, the government of Canada. Moms Stop the Harm launched a Stronger Together Canada, a project designed to provide peer support to Canadian families impacted by substance use. And Health Canada provided $345,000. And I say, amazing. I say, congratulations. I say, I don't, you know, I don't necessarily, you know, agree on some of their platforms and some of their agendas, but I know that keeping a mother's child alive through all the forms of harm reduction is necessary. and hopefully at any point when that harm reduction reduces the harms enough for that individual to have to make another choice about changing their life, that there's other options available. Yeah. And we need to support everything.
Yeah.
Like
you know what? Yeah. I mean, what to say? Like, we have to fight for existence. Anyway, without getting too down, let's talk about recovery now. You know what? The haters are going to hate, and you know what? The survivors of addiction are behind me, and you're not going to silence our voice. I don't care. We're going to keep talking about recovery because it does exist. So, Darren, we're going to talk recovery today with a mom who wants to help moms that drink too much. Who are we talking with today?
Absolutely. We get to talk recovery with Michelle Smith. She is an author of Recovery is the New Black, a certified mental health and addictions counselor and virtual recovery coach. She's passionate about supporting women with tools and resources around substance abuse, mental health, bereavement, eating disorders, trauma, and codependency. Straight out of Washington State. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So, I mean, let's get right into your experience. What was it about your life that led to you writing a book, writing this book, Recovery is the New Black, developing a website, podcast, all around for moms?
Yeah,
what was it that inspired
it was my own personal experience. I had gone through 30 years of my life knowing exactly what addiction is capable of doing. And I had the perfect example of what not to be. And I stayed away, and I decided to have children and start exploring motherhood. And I figured, you know, I was longing for connection, was feeling lonely, depressed, dealing with postpartum depression. And I fell into the mommy wine juice culture. And with that first glass of wine, I was literally hooked into this progressive predisposition to alcoholism that ran in our family, along with this platform of glamorizing alcohol. And my addiction flourished. It flourished beyond my wildest dreams, that I was capable of building a life that I wanted and worked so hard to have, and watched myself want to remove myself from the situation. So it was really hard to say, wow, I built all of this, and now all I want to do is escape my own reality. And it was over the period of like a 6-year span where I went from like normal, I need to consider my relationship with alcohol, I'm starting to know this is problematic in my life, to how can I keep this in my life? And so it was never about let's refrain from drinking, take a break, test drive sobriety. It was moderation, you know, going to weekends, switching the beverage I had in my hand, only drinking on, you know, different things and different strategies, because I wasn't willing to give my best friend up. And so it just was consistent with habits and daily activities that really just formed me into being dependent emotionally and physically on this mind-altering chemical that clearly was not helping me. It was like literally pouring gasoline on my anxiety. I would always feel worse than when I did when I initially reached for that substance. Right. And so, you know, I could have said I knew better. Embarrassingly to say, I'm an addictions counselor. I'm a mental health specialist. I teach this. I know this. And it goes to show that even I can fall victim to being a human being, and the glamour and the destruction and the corruption that this powerful mind-altering chemical has on people like me, that doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers aren't immune. So
that's amazing. I mean, a lot of people, you know, become the recovery coach and addictions counselor, you know, after sort of successfully developing some recovery in their life and abstinence.
Right.
That, I mean, generally we talk, you know, denial and shame for the reasons that, like, that must have been over the top for you.
Yes.
You know, having those.
Well, and needing to keep it a secret. Absolutely. And needing to keep it a secret. I can't tell. I work in a prison in solitary confinement. I can't tell these guys that I'm like literally going home and getting drunk at night. Like, as I know that they're in there for driving while suspended and unlawful use of a motor vehicle. You know, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I have this ability, like any human being, is to justify my consumption and my behavior, that I can manage it, I can regulate, I can get this back under control. And I learned that rock bottom had a basement. I was hospitalized 4 times for fatal alcohol poisoning. I had CPS in my life twice. And I knew my consequences in my rock bottom wouldn't be anything to do with the correctional justice system, because I know the judges, I know the jails. That wasn't supposed to scare me. Right. And Mama Bear came out when you say, what? You're going to take away my kids? You want to come see if I have food in my refrigerator? And that took me back. That got me to take an honest look at my relationship and how destructive it is to everybody that I love. Not just, this isn't just affecting me. This is affecting everybody. And this is a selfish disease that I need to get my head out of my butt and figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So I jumped into inpatient treatment. I was still stubborn, so I decided that I was too cool for it and left. And, you know, started in with Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just started building my own patchway to recovery and saying, I like this treatment modality from this program. I like smart recovery. I really believe in psychotropic medication to help stabilize my depression. I like meditation. And I started picking and pulling different treatment modalities. And I'm like, I can't just drink green tea and meditate and expect this to change my life, right? I have to like put in the freaking work. And so that's what I started doing. And I didn't count the days. I really just started making every day, tracking my habits and where I was focusing my energy. And if I didn't like my job, I can't spend the rest of my life getting drunk by it, right? And just like being miserable. I have to change what's no longer serving me. And, you know, really the expectations that I had for my life before kids, then having children, was never justified. Like I never changed the expectations I had for myself. So I was always falling short. Okay. And being a perfectionist and a type A personality, I didn't want people to see that side of me. I wanted people to know that I could hang at work and I could still be a really great mom and I didn't need help.
That's, I mean, you talk about, I think, a very unconscious state that new parents get into. They don't sort of consciously sacrifice or let go of where they're not going anymore as a bachelor, or, you know, and sort of try to maintain that at the same time, not seeing ourselves like perhaps succeed. And, you know, and that can be depressing. It can be, you know, when we're not conscious of it, it can be very difficult to manage. You know, let's talk about the postpartum depression. I think, you know, as a man, I can't experience that.
Right.
You know, the biology behind it and what's actually going on. But even as the mother themselves, they don't see the you know, the parent that passed away in their life, or, you know, the thing that you can look at and go, that's causing me grief. And you know, it's such a shock to the system. You're supposed to be happy. This is supposed to be a beautiful time in life, and, you know, a newborn baby. And you can't see it as a mother, the biology of what's going on. Like, how big of an impact was that in your alcoholism?
It was the turning point of when my addiction went from, you know, abuse to dependence. And okay. it was this idea that I thought motherhood would look a certain way, because when you turn to Instagram or to other platforms, it's very curated, very perfect. And when you're sleep deprived, when your husband deploys and heads to the war, when you just find out that your mother's dead as you're becoming a mother, trying to work through bereavement, trying to keep this human alive, right? The financial hardships, everything that life brings us, you know, and are those excuses? No, they're not, right? This is what life throws at us. And we have to have support and connection and tools to be able to get through some really heavy seasons of life. And right. So for me, I didn't have an idea or an instruction manual. You know, we don't know what we're going to do, but you as a mother, you think you're failing automatically. Like you don't know what you're doing. And all you have back to fall back on is this mother intuition. And so I was in complete denial. Then I started having mini strokes because I wasn't taking care of myself. So it was like all of these series of unfortunate events were taking place. And, you know, it's so fascinating looking back, but when you're in that, when you're looking at a different lens through your life, it's different than like living in that moment where the only connection and like solidarity I could find were these other women who were going to the parks at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they would stroll their babies around and they would be putting Baileys in their coffee. So it was like this slowly, I was welcomed with 8 bottles of wine the day I delivered my daughter, saying, welcome to motherhood. Being a mom is really hard, and this helps.
There's lots of conversations in the media, especially recently, the seriousness of mothers and the wine clubs and all that. And you know, for many women, having some wine at night is completely part of their healthy routine. So, Absolutely. You know, it's not anything against that, but for some like you, it became a problem, and then it became, you were dependent on alcohol. So you have all these issues, you know, pick and choose some different recovery pathways, you get some recovery under you and so forth. So we want to talk about your book, Recovery is the New Black. Yeah, that's right. Recovery is the New Black. So lots of, like Darren said at the beginning of the show, lots of people, you know, get this, I want to help other people. And some do it through sponsorship, and some do it with like vlogs and blogs and radio shows and all that kind of stuff. So what prepared you for that? And then what made you want to write a book? Have you written other books? Like, what is Recovery is the New Black? So first, let's talk about what got you prepared to even do this.
Right. So it was more of, the more I started recovering out loud and asking, people would ask me curiosity questions like, how come you're not drinking today? And, you know, I started out with, why are you drinking? You know, kind of like that snotty, like defensive, like stay in your own lane. And then I was like, you know, Michelle, people are genuinely asking because maybe they want to say something to me. And I'm like totally shutting this wall over them. And so I'm just like, you know, I'm just a person who decides that alcohol has no value in my life. And I'm a better person and a better mom when I'm not drinking, you know. And I just started like being honest and authentic for the first time in my life about this doesn't add value to my life. And I can be proud of the fact that I am not ingesting the same gasoline I put in my vehicle when I drive my car. Like I shouldn't feel shame because I'm not the cool, excessive binge drinking mom right now. I'm in a different season of my life. And once I learned that I was okay with who I was able to start just not like, oh, everybody, let's get sober. I'm not anti-drinking. I'm just pro-sobriety. And so I started like making recovery shirts that just said sober vibes and Recovery is the New Black. You guys wouldn't believe the high fives and Target and Starbucks. And I'm freaking so proud of you. And I'm in recovery. I've got 20 years. And that gave me the boost and confidence to know that, you know, because I started with it tied around my waist, a sweatshirt, like I have to have an exit plan for this. And I started building this social media, like a journal and a blog, and all of these women were just like, me too, me too, me too. And everybody says me too, but no one wants to be the first person to raise their hand and ask for help because we don't think it's okay. And so that's just really how it started. And, you know, I get tons and hundreds and thousands of messages and emails, and just, I created the book because I wanted a place to tell my ladies and the guys where to go to hear my full story, to be a roadmap of this is how I did it. And this is what worked for me. And I hope that you can be inspired by some self-help curriculum that's in here to support you in whatever your journey is going to look like. And so that's why it was really created. And it was such a therapeutic process. I mean, it was really hard, but, you know, I didn't hold anything back, and I'm really proud of myself for doing that. And my goal is, obviously books don't make money. My goal is to get this in the bottom of treatment programs, inpatient programs, get this into the jails. I'm going to be going, you know, through all the recovery houses in my area and just providing this as a tool for people to know that there is a redemption story in every single one of them, that you can go in from rock bottom and you can have these leaps and valleys, and recovery is not linear. It's something we have to work towards every single day. But I think people are so used to seeing the stereotypical rock bottom and what that looks like. And my perspective is coming more from a place of like corporate and being this person that can't let people down. And I see the corruption within the professional field of doctors taking opiates from their patients and they're getting high at night and then going back and practicing. You can't just be that loud and proud with your license on the line, your pilot license on the line. And it's just a very different world of addiction, but it doesn't discriminate. And it just goes to show that anyone from anonymous to famous is not immune from this condition. And I want those people to feel safe to come get the help they need, ask for it without shaming the sick, getting what you need and getting back to your life. Let's not make this weird and make this something that doesn't have to be. So that's what I'm hoping the book provides, is just that roadmap to say this can be a perfect life. You can have this season of life that's really hard and you can get back to a certain type of life that was even more powerful than it was to begin with. I'm not defined by my addiction or my depression. And I am so proud of everybody, including myself, of where we've been and what we're doing with everything that's happened to us. We're changing this trauma into like these redemption stories of just building the most incredible things. So my hope is to build a couple treatment programs for women to be able to bring their kiddos, because that's a huge barrier for people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, you can sure hear the recovery coach in you. It's just, you know, it sounds like it's a natural thing. I mean, I think, I mean, whatever, however you were as a counselor before, you know what I mean? Like this story, I mean, it's so many of the people we've talked to, the personal stories, there really isn't any substance without that background, without that, you know, that bottom or that, you know, that close call or just the grief and loss that comes from some of our experiences. So you have on recoveryisthenewblack.com, you have programs on there. Tell us a little bit about, where is it? The Sober Mom
Squad.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is the 5 of us women, we're all moms, and we started this during the pandemic of, wow, there's so many women that are struggling and all of this, you know, it's illegal to get a haircut in the States, but you can get curbside liquor and cannabis just fine. And I am a huge harm reduction advocate. And so there's a lot of my patients and my friends that would die if the liquor stores were not open. This is survival, and we're already inundating the healthcare system. So we can't have them on detox protocols in the hospital, right? But on the other end of the spectrum, we're creating people to excessively drink and quarantine binge, which is all fun and games until you can't stop drinking, right? And so it was like this epiphany for us to say, you know what, we're home with our kids, we're about to lose our crap. These women need something. And so we started with 1 free Zoom, and now we're up to 25 a week. We've got thousands of women all over, tons of media attention. I mean, it's been bananas. It's been so awesome to give back and to be here with these women doing the same thing, because it's hard right now with, you know, homeschooling and us losing our jobs or having to resign to be with our kids. Yeah. And doing it all when it's sober, because we don't have that coping tool anymore. When our gyms were closed and our AA meetings were closed and our therapy sessions, that's how we stayed sober. That was our outlet and our connections. And when you take that away from us, but you make sure that booze is 24 hours accessible, it's really hard for a lot of people to stay sober, you know? Yeah. So, but it has been an amazing thing. And there's so much more to come with Sober Mom Squad. We're just getting started, and I can't wait to see where this goes and how this continues to impact women as we have the second, you know, public health crisis start to come and people starting to go back to work with these new behaviors and patterns of these habits. You can't just, as we all know, we can't just cut these off and go back to work and think that this hasn't affected us. We've created these new ways of living and coping that don't just disappear. So well, I really hope people are getting that support.
Yeah, I mean, this lockdown pandemic, I mean, whatever you call it, it's definitely pushing buttons for those of us that, you know, maybe were managing, not knowing the button was there, and requires a supply, you know, that equates to the amount of people that are going through struggles right now. And so that's awesome. Is there any specific requirement to get onto the Zoom calls for Sober Mom Squad?
The only requirement is the desire to be exploring or living an alcohol-free life, and you need to be a mother. And by mother, it's a very loose term. It could be a dog mom, a bereaved mom, an adoptive mom, a stepmom, bonus mom, patiently waiting mom. But we wanted to niche it down to really be able to provide motherhood, you know, sobriety, boundaries, the things that moms are really needing right now. And this is cool because this is a barrier that moms haven't been able to get out of the house to hit meetings. So, or transportation's a barrier. I eliminate as many barriers to being successful as possible. And that's my jam. So I know that these Zooms, you know, will be here to stay in some capacity across the recovery platforms, because it is an awesome tool for people who can't get to meetings like others can. So I'm grateful for that.
One of the sayings we have here where I work is being a mom and a dad is one of the most safety sensitive positions out there. You're taking care of kids, and you know, we need to focus. We put so much focus on safety sensitive positions for employment, like construction workers, crane operators, you know, which is all important. I really don't want a pilot that just did a whack of heroin flying my plane. But the idea of putting that focus into, you know, keeping moms and dads and community healthy and safety, it just doesn't seem a priority here in Canada. I don't think it is much in the States either. Hence your conversations at the beginning about how liquor is available 24/7 or whatever, but you know, they take away all this other stuff. And we're grateful that my home group is back in person. So I'm excited about that, because it is different doing it in person than it is. You know, we got a couple minutes left. I did want to ask you a question, and then Darren, you can close up. You mentioned rock bottom a lot, and we've had 7 years of shows here and hundreds of guests, and there's always this conversation about rock bottom. Like, there is no such thing as rock bottom. Rock bottom, you should never tell somebody who uses drugs or alcohol that they have to hit rock bottom to change. Disclaimer here, I really, you know, people use on a good day or bad day, it doesn't matter, you know, rock bottom. What are your thoughts? You've used the word a few times, and I know some people that may be listening to the show are, you know, what is your definition of rock bottom? Do people have to hit rock bottom?
Absolutely not. No, I think really you create what your bottom looks like. You decide when you need to, everybody knows whether their relationship with alcohol is problematic. You don't need an online questionnaire, or you don't need to be handcuffed and put in the back of a police car and sitting in the drunk tank, because that's all happened to everybody, and we continue to keep using. When you get that external consequence far enough away from that behavior, you're going to forget how it was, and you're going to go back to what you did. Yeah. I mean, that's just proven evidence of what people do in addiction. And so, no, because I thought I had hit my rock bottom, and then I keep finding that was a basement. Like, it's an endless pit. It'll never be enough. And so this whole sober curious movement and gray area drinking, it's not normalcy. You're drinking binge on all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is you're an alcoholic, you need AA, and you're doomed and you're a debt to society. There's this whole gray area of when you can stop and say, I'm starting to see a trend. Is this adding value to my life? Is this costing me more than it's giving me? Start getting curious about your relationship with alcohol and meet it with self-compassion.
I love that. I love that term, sober curious. I love that term. Really appreciate you being on the show. You know, big shout out to all the sober moms out there. You know, it's possible we do recover. Thanks for being on the show, Darren.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I implore all our listeners and viewers to check out recoveryisthenewblack.com. You can check out the podcasts. You can sit and drink your wine, listen to a podcast, and consider what the next step is going to be. Jump on a Zoom call on the Sober Mom Squad, video off or on, and you know, eventually lead to talking to someone such as yourself, and really trying to make some changes in your life. Michelle Smith, thank you very much for coming on Talk Recovery today.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you later, and best wishes for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio on 100.5 FM. Thanks for listening us there. You're also watching us on Facebook Live, and because we're not in studio, so here we are. And we got Ryan on the air now. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. How are you doing there, Giuseppe?
I'm doing good. Ryan, thanks for joining us on Talk Recovery Radio. We just finished talking to Michelle, sober moms, and a book called Recovery is the New Black, which I kind of like the name of that book. There's a lot of talk about addiction and fentanyl and overdoses and all that. And we need to keep talking about alcohol because that's definitely an issue. There's another side to addiction. Yeah, we need to save lives, but the idea that addiction causes harm to so many people, not just the person that's using the drugs. And you're an uncle, you had a niece, and sadly she was murdered. And you're raising her awareness on what happened. Hopefully this doesn't happen to other families. So can you tell us a little bit on what happened to Shana? So Shana's your niece, and she had issues with substance use, housing, big story here. So go ahead, let's hear it.
Well, back in 2006, there were some issues with Ministry of Children and Family Development, essentially ripped the family apart. And it's to tie in 16 years or so of what happened in 30 minutes is quite impossible. So I'm going to try to just kind of summarize. My wife at the time and I advocated to get Shana in our care. And unfortunately, due to a 45-minute phone interview, they decided that it wasn't a good fit. They kept her in care. I thought the whole process was completely preposterous, right? How does somebody do due diligence in the best interest of a child after determining a 45-minute phone conversation? Had they come to my house and seen the trampoline and my kids and my dog, and we had a movie theater in the basement. Had they done their due diligence, I feel that we wouldn't be, I wouldn't be on the show right now.
Why did Shana need to find a new housing? What was going on with her parents?
Well, you see, Shana came from quite a large family, and Shana struggled with mental illness. She had behavioral disorders and whatnot, which wasn't really brought to light until later on in the equation. I myself, I'm raising somebody with those challenges, and it's very frustrating. You've got very little supports in the community. You've got children that are kind of, I guess the way that it's like living with an addict that's not an addict, right? You've got this brain dysregulation. You've got the inability for them to control their emotions. They put themselves in situations that are not safe situations. And I think you can see the correlation there behind, as I can reflect on when I was in addiction, I had those same sort of behaviors, right? I would put myself in situations where I wasn't thinking clearly. Now, mind you, the substances is what caused that disconnect in my brain, right? Like I'm sitting there, I go through a stressful situation. What's my thought? I don't want to feel the stress. I don't want to deal with it. I need to take something to eliminate the stress. So as I'm hitting that reward end in the back of my head, the frontal part of my brain, which tells me, hey, you need to do this and you need to do that, right? This is the survival mechanism of my brain right here. And, when you have somebody that has these behavioral disorders, there's a disconnect there. So they don't know how to process, and I'm doing some research on it and whatnot. And they say it has something to do with a dysfunction of the amygdala. I don't want to get into a big.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things though that we need to get into that discussion because it's about prevention. We are wondering why there are so many people between the ages of 20 and 40 that are dying of overdoses and using drugs in downtown East Side. but we're not putting any energy into why the 10-year-olds, the
Exactly.
19-year-olds are even doing this stuff to
Exactly.
start off. Nobody becomes a heroin, and I use the word addict because I'm one of them. Nobody uses heroin, and wants to use it every day. It's just like, yeah, I'm better than this, and then the next day it's like, well, I'm using it every day. So prevention is key, and obviously that didn't happen for Shana.
No.
Shana's now in her early 20s. She's gone through foster parents, there's abuse, there's all this craziness that goes on. Shana now is a 22-year-old young woman, and she's been murdered. So number one, how did you find out? Number two, like, what happened? Is there any, like, no one's been charged, no one knows?
Yeah, everything's up in the air. And the crazy thing is, you've got so much stuff happening in the Lower Mainland right now. It's like every day you're hearing about overdose deaths and shootings and people getting stabbed in North Vancouver. And there's a real, we're at a crisis point, right? Like, and we've been at a crisis point for years. When they began to defund mental health back in the 80s, this is the result of that exercise we see today. I don't believe this is a theory. I believe this is a fact. If we look at, if we were to create a chart, I would see, as they decrease the amount of mental illness funding, you would see an exponential growth in the amount of incidents out there. Now, what had happened? I've been in recovery since 2010. Had a few. I've had a few setbacks along the way, but I've gotten back on track, and I'm lucky. Now, I'd heard about the shooting in the morning. I'm right now, I'm on a disability. I'll do a shameless plug. I invented a tool for electricians, and I was on my way back from Vancouver to pick up a 3D printer so I could start manufacturing this tool. What I've learned in the programs is keep moving forward. If you have a stumbling block, talk to your sponsor, keep moving forward, figure it out, right? It's a process, just like anything. And, I give great credit to the programs, and, obviously I needed to be willing to do this. So as I'm driving home, I go to call my sister. I'm all excited. I've been pumped. I've gone through the patent process. I've got this thing. I'm ready to go full on. And, I'm approaching the Alex Fraser Bridge coming back from Richmond, and call my sister to talk about, one of my favorite topics, me, right? And then she just sounded off on the phone. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, oh, well, Shana got shot today. And I'm like, what, is she okay? She's like, no, she's dead. Right. And that, wow, talk about just
powerlessness.
To be honest, I don't even remember a great deal of that ride home. I was just in a haze. Yeah. And it's caused me to reflect a lot on the past and, what happened, and, the situation. I've put a lot of thought, as she was taken from the ministry. The one thing I could think of, if I was a child, I was 7 years old, and the only thing I've ever known, my family, which I'm comfortable with, and I have that security, if that was taken away from me, I can't even imagine the trauma that I would endure as a result of that, right? And it's not looked at, well, it's in the child's best interest. We're taking them out, right? Well, what did they do? Did they contact the uncle? Did they contact the family? Did they find some sort of measures to not only, deal with the situation? So we need to remove the child, but we need to keep the child in a safe environment, right? We need to keep them in a familiar environment. Now, I can guarantee you, if they would have said, hey, Shana, you want to go stay in Uncle Ryan's house? I can tell you right now, she'd have her bags packed in 2 minutes. She'd be waiting out the door saying, let's go. Right.
And this is the whole, with our first guest, sober moms, it's all about that community capital. And, we're trying to solve an addiction crisis, but we're trying to solve it I think, in the wrong ways. We need to go like, how did it even start? We're just looking at the consequences of drug use. How do we solve that? When it's like, well, shouldn't we try and figure out why addiction is even becoming such an issue in North America? And until we do that, it's not going to happen. So I really appreciate your commentary on all these issues, because this is one of those things that that creates trauma, which many of us know. A lot of people, follow into the substance use disorder category because of the trauma that they've had in their life. So you started I Am Shana's Voice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So most people, when somebody dies in their family, they go to the memorial, they say a prayer, depending on what your faith is, and celebrate their life and move on in life. Why did you create I Am Shana's Voice? What's the point of it? What are you trying to do with that?
Well, I think you just captured it and what you were saying there. You see, I look at the whole addiction standpoint as a very simplified business model. Okay. You have a supply, you have a demand. Now, for years, right, the war on drugs has been going after the supply end of the war. Okay. If you have a demand, provided there's always that demand, there's always going to be a supply. Somebody's always going to step up. You're going to bust a dealer. Next thing you know, you got 5 kids out there, that are disconnected from their home, like Shana, right? They've had that structure rocked. So now they're looking for that place to connect, right? Because a lot of people give up, right? We gave up. It was just such a process. How do we get Shana our care? And finally, we just surrendered to the fact it's never going to happen, right? And then let's fast forward, 15 years down the road, me driving home, talking to my sister about Shana, being murdered, that lifestyle. So it's caused a lot of reflection. And I've got to say, I'm in a very unique statistic now. I know lots of people that have overdosed. That is not, unfortunately, that's a very common scenario now. But when you have someone in your family that's been murdered, it's a completely different dynamic. And
so do you want I Am Shana's Voice? Are you going after policy change? Are you going after awareness? Like, do you want people to, like, if somebody wants to support you, what is it that you're trying to get across to make change so this doesn't happen to somebody else?
I'm an addict. I want it all, right? Give it all to me. It's on all fronts, right? We're advocating for changes with the government. As I said, I'm having issues with the relationship with my son due to his mental disabilities. There's nothing out there, right, to help. So, going back to the 1930s, a couple individuals started an organization up that didn't really exist before. So what's stopping me from doing the same? Why don't I create a group for families that are struggling? And why don't we figure it out, right? Is it going to be polished in a month or 6 months or in a year? No, it's a work in progress. So I see an opportunity here. There's my family's endured a huge tragedy. I've engaged my sister in it because I know how she deals. And I know that if she was just to sit alone with her thoughts for a period of time, she's going to go down that rabbit hole. So I see an opportunity here to enact a step 12, to do service work on a grander scale, right? Let's talk to the families that are struggling, that are so frustrated. I can't live with my kids anymore. I got to get rid of them because there's this. And, there's an opportunity now to say, hey, let's take a step back. I've got some tools. I've got some understanding. I've got some knowledge. Let me try to help you with that, right? Same as the concept of the 12-step programs, right? Some people deal with addiction like, through internet or whatever. These are all unhealthy behaviors, right? And some, if we look at a teeter-totter, some are more extreme than others. So it's going to rock that teeter-totter back and forth. Exactly. So why don't we just look at that balance point? How do we keep people centered and focused, right? And I believe the principles of the 12 steps to be the key to that. Right.
We also believe that if you build recovery capital, it doesn't matter what pathway of recovery you choose, 12 steps, CBT, SMART, religion, harm reduction, there's a place for everything. Everyone's pathway is unique to them. Sadly, if you watch the beginning of the show, there's lots of infighting going on. My model of care is bigger than your model of care. And, I say it like that because it's absolutely ridiculous. I've been fighting with it for a long time. Really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you very much. It's called I Am Shana's Voice, and you can go, there's a Facebook group as well, so you can stay connected with that. Ryan, we really appreciate you being on the show. And you know what, to all the listeners and viewers out there, like, we need to advocate for ourselves, like just sitting around waiting for the government to do the right thing. The government ain't going to move until they hear what they need. And the reality is, and, I'll end the show with this, and, word for word from government leaders that I've talked to, whenever we do a post or a policy change that has to do with, some type of harm reduction model, it gets reshared on Twitter hundreds of times, and it's like commented and everything. They do a post about a recovery oriented system of care, and there's like, you can hear birds chirping. There's like nothing gets shared, nothing gets like I'm not making this up. Like, this is true. And so what we need to do, if you're in recovery, and a recovery oriented system of care saved your life, and you see a mention about recovery on social media, like, we need you to share, we need you to comment, we need you to like, because government officials look like they get front page news when they open up a consumption site, when they give out 100 treatment beds for recovery. Like, it didn't even make hardly any news at all. So we need to take a look at that. We're not going to change policy. So what you're doing, Ryan, will make a change, because it just adds another soundbite. Like, we need to take care of kids, before they become 22-year-old people with substance use disorder and die. So appreciate your efforts. And you know what, we'll do a share for you again with your I Am Shana's Voice. And thanks for your time, Darren. Always good to see you on Thursdays.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Okay, Ryan, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, Darren, have a good one. See you next Thursday.